Hey guys, so we are on Unit 3. We're going over Lesson 4, which talks about Ag Today. So we've talked about um, agriculture, the history of it, how it started, some different innovations that had to occur to get to where we are today, and we're going to talk about the status of it. So just by looking at those, do you know what those are? Guarantee you like it. That is actually where chocolate comes from. So those are cocoa beans, and that's how you get chocolate. So it is a major cash crop for developing countries. South America grows a lot of these. So it says when you think of ag now, what do you think that it looks like to you? So if you live in the middle of Houston, agriculture, you probably have a different view of agriculture than, say, if you live in the Panhandle in Texas on a big, huge farm. Okay, so it's going to depend. Agriculture is very broad. There's a lot of different things that go into it in the United States. So we have on the small scale, like in cities, you can see farmers markets. That's agriculture that's using local community agriculture to get those freshly grown produce to customers. Grocery stores, that's agriculture. Maybe it's a little broader. Maybe you're talking about family farms. Okay, there's family farms in agriculture. Those are smaller farms, small scale farms, or large industrial farms. So you think of like Del Monte. Have you ever seen the Del Monte brand of green beans or corn and all of that they have? That would be a large industrial farm. Maybe Tyson chicken farms. That would be a large industrial farm. A small family farm that raises, a couple hundred chickens, that's going to be considered a family farm. So there's a lot that goes into it. And most of the food in the United States is produced on those large industrial farms of those big names that you know. So just sit and think about some of the big names of the big industry farms. Go through your pantry, go through your freezer, and you're going to realize, oh wow, they do produce most of the food. Tyson's a big one. Purdue is a big one in the chicken world. You're looking at Del Monte is a big one. The Green Giant. So all of those are examples of industrial farms. So we in the United States, hopefully we're very, very lucky to live where we live because, you go to a grocery store and you want anything. Say avocado, which is not grown, like avocado is not grown here in North Texas where I'm at, but I can go to a grocery store and I'm guaranteed that there are going to be avocados there. People in other places around the world, they don't have that luxury. They don't have stock shelves in a grocery store. That's not an option. They're relying still on what they can grow and what they have. So we're very, very lucky to have that accessibility that we've got. So even though we are in 2023, there is still famine going on. There's still people that go to bed hungry, that they don't have enough food in other countries. So it says, while famine was relatively common in the past, as a result of a bad year or several bad years, it has become less common following these industrial revolutions, at least in the countries with modern ag technology. Now, those that don't have it, they're going to be more susceptible to famine. So we also design programs to address food insecurity, which means lack of adequate food, to prevent this, to prevent a famine. So a number of factors have led to insufficient food, malnutrition, famine. Food insecurity is different from famine. So food insecurity, you need to know, is defined as being without reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. So they don't have access to a lot of food. Famine is more extreme. That's worse. So that's a broader extreme scarcity of food, and that leads to people not eating, malnutrition, high infant mortality, and death. So there are 3 common causes of famine in the modern world. Poverty. So those that are in the poverty level, they can't really buy the foods that they need. Drought, other climate conditions that affect the food supply. If there's no water, there's no food that's going to get grown, and that leads to higher food costs because that food there's less of it, and that goes into where the poverty level cannot afford it. Political instability. So violent political instability, so like those countries that have wars just going on all the time, that reduces your access to food locally and internationally because they're dealing with imports, things beyond our control, where other countries aren't selling to that country maybe because they're at war, and that's going to result in famine. So these are all things that go into our international food problem. So some less common causes of famine could be engineered. So it says in the 1930s, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union limited access of food to Ukrainians to politically weaken the region and destroy the wealthier peasant class. So he did it on purpose. It was terrible. Farmers were producing grain, but all of it was property of the government. So millions of people starved, and this was called the Holodomor. Millions of people starved for no reason, just because he wanted to do a power trip over them. The Great Chinese Famine took place after the Communist Revolution in China. Drought and poor weather conditions, they helped a little bit, but Chinese policies during the Great Leap Forward were really responsible. To 45 million people died between 59 and 61, while their storage facilities were full of rice. So they were starving their people even though they had the supplies. So in the Soviet Union, the government commandeered grain supplies, leaving the people without food. The Great Famine is still a subject largely banned in China today. So ag was a weapon in these phases towards their own people. So that's pretty crazy. All right, so what ag looks like around the world today. There's coffee, another crop of developing nations. South America regions, they grow a lot of coffee beans. They like it warm. So when we talk about agri-revolution, talking about it started in Britain and spread to North America and Europe. It didn't really impact Eastern Europe, Asia, the Middle East, or India, or Africa at the same time or same ways. Farming continued, but successfully and less so. So by the 1980s, only 4% of the population in U.S. and Canada and 7% in Western Europe were involved in agriculture. In contrast, 64% of the population in Africa and 61% of Asia worked in ag operations. And that is less today for America, y'all. So the global development of agriculture differed depending on what was available and what grew. So like in coastal areas, fish was really common. Fishing developed in a significant trade. People grew what was there. In some areas, plants grew well, and the land provided adequately for livestock. So, with that in mind, ag development was relatively similar in many regions until the ag revolution. So in some areas, ag is developed on a larger scale, providing an adequate food supply. However, in other areas of the developing world or developing countries, which are poor ag countries, often seeking to become more advanced economically and socially, ag has not moved forward like we have. So in developing, such as 75% of the population is engaged in small-scale ag. And you may think, oh, that's great. More of the population is involved in agriculture. We need that. Well, yes, that's good, but that means that those individuals are having to grow their own food. We do not have to do that. You don't have to worry about growing your own food if you're not a farmer. Okay? You just worry about going to your job, making your money, going to the grocery store, and that's where you buy your food. So that's the difference there. It talks about sharecropping. It's a system of agriculture in which the landowner lets the tenant, so the person renting the land, use the land in return for a share of the crops. So they get a crop and they give the landowner some of that crop. Large farms are more profitable. That's why a lot of people are moving to that. Family farms is just hard to survive now. Since they do so at a significant human cost. In other countries, the environment, including soil and weather conditions, make ag less successful and cause a greater risk of inadequate food supply. So that just kind of talks about ag globally today. Just know in the United States, you're very lucky to have fully stocked grocery stores, because it is not like that everywhere in the world. And you don't have a government that's going to cause you to starve by making farmers not give you their crops. So there's a lot into that, a lot of information there. But please read through